$97 million. That is the staggering fortune one of the most electrifying athletes on the planet burned straight to the ground. Latrell Sprewell had the absolute pinnacle of global fame, but all of it was completely annihilated by one single arrogant phrase. Welcome to the dark side of fame. How does a sports icon go from dominating the hardwood to facing the brutal, humiliating reality of endless legal battles and severe property confiscation? The absolute breaking point arrived in October of 2004. According to publications in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune from that exact month, Latrell Sprewell walked away from a $21 million contract extension. In the reported interviews, he boldly stated he needed to feed his family. But why on earth would anyone turn down $21 million? What dark financial disaster was already brewing behind closed doors? The terrifying ruin did not stop at a rejected contract. Fast forward to August of 2007, and investigators uncovered a devastating paper trail. According to the official files of the Federal Court of Wisconsin, authorities legally seized his massive luxury yacht due to a crushing debt of $1,300,000. In the case files, it was explicitly noted that his payments had simply ceased. How does a global superstar suddenly find himself unable to pay a $1,300,000 bill? The chilling secret revealed in those court documents paints a grim picture of a man violently spiraling out of control. But to truly understand how Latrell Sprewell reached that bizarre, career-ending moment in October of 2004, we must rewind the clock to June of 1992, the exact day his name was first whispered in the high-stakes boardrooms. Latrell Sprewell did not have an easy path to the glamorous arenas of the professional league. Growing up with a difficult childhood in Milwaukee, his start in organized basketball came surprisingly late compared to his peers. But raw, explosive talent cannot be hidden for long. During his time at the University of Alabama, scouts began to notice this fiery, aggressive guard who played every possession like his life depended on it. According to the collegiate athletic reports from the 1991 to 1992 season, Latrell Sprewell averaged 17.8 points per game. That is a solid number, but was it enough to guarantee him a spot among the elite? In the scout evaluations, it was noted that while his athleticism was off the charts, his volatile temperament was already raising red flags. And that brings us to the pivotal night of June 24, 1992. According to the official league draft archives, the Golden State Warriors selected Latrell Sprewell with the 24th overall pick. Many television analysts and sports journalists publicly doubted the decision, viewing him as a risky investment. Why would a franchise trust their future to a late bloomer with a questionable attitude? In the press reports of the time, insiders claimed he was destined to be nothing more than a bench warmer. But those critics were about to eat their words. The experts predicted he would quietly sit on the sidelines, but just a few months later, in November of 1992, this supposed bench warmer would force the front office to completely rewrite their financial ledgers. When Latrell Sprewell arrived in Oakland, the odds were stacked against him. However, a sudden wave of injuries to the starting lineup opened a golden door for the ambitious rookie. Under the guidance of head coach Don Nelson, Latrell found something rare in the high-pressure world of professional sports: complete trust and absolute freedom on the hardwood. Nelson unleashed the young guard, allowing his incredible stamina and aggressive defensive style to shine under the brightest lights. The results were nothing short of a deafening success. According to the official league press releases from the 1992 to 1993 season, Latrell Sprewell earned a spot on the all-rookie second team. This was a massive achievement for a 24th pick, but was it just beginner's luck? The following year proved it was not a fluke at all. In the statistical encyclopedias for the 1993 to 1994 season, the records show that Latrell Sprewell spent exactly 43.1 minutes on the floor per game. That was the highest average in the entire league. In the journalists' reports from that era, it was noted that his endurance was almost superhuman, running relentless fast breaks while locking down the opponent's best players. But how much pressure can one young athlete take before the cracks begin to show? He quickly became an untouchable superstar with a multi-million-dollar contract, but in 1995, a new figure stepped into the club's front office who would shatter this perfect illusion completely. The comfortable world Latrell Sprewell built in Oakland began to crumble fast, giving way to a relentless management crisis. The golden era ended abruptly, leaving loyal fans desperately searching for answers. According to the official club press releases from February of 1995, Don Nelson officially stepped down from his position as head coach. This sudden resignation sent shockwaves through the entire organization and removed the only real authority figure Latrell truly respected. Without his trusted mentor, Latrell found himself trapped in a chaotic locker room that functioned more like a rapidly sinking ship than a professional sports franchise. In the prominent sports media reports of that time, it was heavily noted that the revolving door of new coaches created a highly toxic environment, leading to constant fiery clashes over game tactics and basic player discipline. The team's performance plummeted drastically, and the underlying tension was visible to everyone during every single game. Looking closely at the official league standings for the 1995 to 1996 season, the Golden State Warriors managed to secure only 36 victories. 36 wins for a franchise that had recently dreamed of deep playoff runs and glorious championships. But why was this specific disappointing number so devastating for their marquee player? For a fierce and incredibly proud competitor like Latrell Sprewell, constant losing was entirely unbearable, and his deeply rebellious nature began to surface for the whole world to see. He started accumulating hefty fines, intentionally skipping mandatory team events, and openly challenging front office decisions. In the internal team memos, it was thoroughly documented that his extreme frustration was rapidly boiling over into open defiance. The dark side of fame was tightening its grip on his career. His disappointment grew darker with every single loss, but the absolute real powder keg was planted in June of 1997, when a man named P.J. Carlesimo walked right into the head coach's office. The front office desperately needed someone to restore strict order, but their fateful choice would soon ignite an unprecedented disaster on the basketball court. They brought in a man widely known for his iron-fisted, dictatorial approach to the game. According to the widespread reports published in the San Francisco Chronicle, the organization officially signed P.J. Carlesimo as their new head coach on June 5, 1997. This was a very clear, threatening message to the players, but how would a fiercely independent star react to a manager who demanded total, unquestioning control over every breath they took? The clash of these two explosive personalities was immediate and intensely destructive. From the very first training camp, aggressive verbal altercations echoed through the practice facility walls. In the locker room, diaries, and subsequent journalist investigations, it was noted that Carlesimo constantly berated Latrell Sprewell, loudly criticizing his every move on the hardwood. This was not just regular coaching. It felt like a deeply personal vendetta aimed at breaking the star player. And the results on the floor were a total, humiliating catastrophe. According to the Historical League schedule archives from November of 1997, the Golden State Warriors suffered a devastating streak of 14 defeats early in the regular season. 14 losses in a single month is enough to break anyone's spirit, but what happens when you combine that miserable losing streak with a boiling, mutual hatred? The pressure cooker was whistling loudly, and the daily screaming matches were quickly becoming the team's dark new normal. The tension in that practice gym was so incredibly thick you could cut it with a knife. And on December 1st, 1997, that metaphorical knife was finally drawn during what was supposed to be a completely routine morning practice session. What started as a completely standard passing drill quickly escalated into one of the most infamous and shocking moments in the entire history of professional sports. The ugly secret revealed that day would forever change the public perception of player and coach dynamics. It was just another highly frustrating morning for a desperately struggling team. According to the extensive, detailed materials from the league's internal investigation, the catastrophic incident took place at the Golden State practice facility on December 1, 1997. Coach Carlesimo aggressively yelled at Latrell Sprewell, loudly demanding that he make crisper, sharper passes to his teammates. Latrell firmly told him to stay away, but the coach boldly kept approaching. And then the absolute unthinkable happened. In a sudden, terrifying explosion of pure physical rage, Latrell lunged forward, wrapping his massive hands tightly around his coach's bare neck. But how long did this terrifying, life-threatening assault actually last? According to the sworn witness testimonies meticulously recorded in the case files of the independent arbitrator, the severe choking lasted anywhere from 10 to 15 agonizing seconds. 10 to 15 seconds of pure, breathless silence in the gym as a superstar franchise player violently dragged his head coach down toward the ground. In the official incident reports, it was described that panicked teammates frantically rushed in to pull them apart, only for Latrell to forcefully return 20 minutes later and land a heavy, punishing punch. The situation was completely out of control. The dark side of fame had fully consumed him in that blinding, chaotic moment of fury. Latrell Sprewell stormed out of the gymnasium that afternoon, genuinely confident that he would just be handed a standard heavy fine and a temporary suspension. But he was severely mistaken. Barely 48 hours later, a highly restrictive legal document landed firmly on his desk that threatened to completely erase his entire life's work. When a star falls from grace, the impact is always devastating, but no one could have predicted the sheer speed of this particular execution. Golden State management did not just want to punish their rogue player. They wanted to completely erase his existence from their franchise. According to the official club documents released to the press on December 3, 1997, the organization took the totally unprecedented step of tearing up his active 4-year contract. In the blink of an eye, $23.7 million simply vanished into thin air. In the reports from major sports media, it was heavily noted that franchises almost never terminate guaranteed deals, but this time the line had been irreversibly crossed. The brutal punishment, however, did not stop at the club level. The very next day, the highest authority in the basketball world stepped into the spotlight to make a massive, chilling example out of Latrell Sprewell. According to the official press release from the Commissioner's Office on December 4, 1997, David Stern handed down an incredibly harsh sentence. He officially suspended the guard for exactly 82 games, stripping away his ability to earn a living for an entire year. In the sports world, this was the equivalent of a professional exile. Shoe sponsors immediately panicked, cutting ties and canceling lucrative endorsement deals almost overnight. The media ripped his character to shreds, painting him as the ultimate villain of modern athletics. But how legal was this terrifying double punishment? The league front office loudly celebrated what they believed was a swift, highly effective resolution. However, deep in the shadows, the relentless lawyers of the players' union were already preparing a massive, historic lawsuit that would soon turn the entire American legal system completely upside down. The massive suspension felt like a final, crushing blow, but the battle was actually just beginning to rage inside the quiet, oak-paneled courtrooms. Latrell Sprewell refused to simply fade into obscurity without a ferocious legal fight. He firmly believed the league had overstepped its boundaries, illegally punishing him twice for the exact same offense. To settle this unprecedented, highly explosive dispute, the two warring sides turned to a neutral third party. The entire sports world held its breath, waiting for the final verdict from independent arbitrator John Feerick. In the comprehensive legal archives of the case, it was thoroughly documented that the union lawyers aggressively argued against the absolute power of the commissioner. They claimed the punishment was completely disproportionate and violated the fundamental rights laid out in the collective bargaining agreement. Could a single man really dictate the absolute ruin of an athlete's career based solely on raw emotion and public pressure? According to the official legal materials of the court ruling issued in March of 1998, the independent arbitrator delivered a truly shocking decision that sent tremors through the league's front offices. Feerick significantly reduced the extreme suspension and, most importantly, fully reinstated the terminated contract. By the stroke of a pen, exactly $23.7 million were completely restored to Latrell Sprewell. The money was officially saved, securing his financial future for the time being. But the overwhelming toxic damage to his public image was already done. He was widely viewed as a dangerous, uncontrollable liability. When the dust finally settled in the autumn of 1998, Latrell looked around the league and discovered a chilling reality. Not a single franchise wanted to welcome the infamous coach choker into their fragile locker room. Life completely without the roaring crowds and the squeaking hardwood proved to be an agonizing, isolating experience for the disgraced superstar. Forced into the shadows, Latrell Sprewell had to endure an entire year of being widely labeled as the ultimate sports pariah. Management in Oakland was utterly desperate to rid themselves of this incredibly toxic asset, constantly working the phones to find a willing trade partner. But who in their right mind would take such a massive, terrifying risk? In the news reports of that turbulent era, the rumors were flying wild, but every potential deal quickly collapsed under the heavy weight of his ruined reputation. In a bold, incredibly aggressive move to fight back against the relentless smear campaign, Latrell took matters into his own hands. According to the federal court materials from 1998, he filed a massive lawsuit against both the league and the press, demanding an astonishing $30 million for severe damages to his personal reputation. The dark side of fame had dragged him into an endless maze of stressful litigation and public mockery. It genuinely felt like his brilliant playing days were permanently over. The entire basketball world was completely paralyzed anyway, locked in a bitter labor dispute between the billionaire owners and the millionaire players. But then, the icy landscape suddenly shifted. According to the official league data, the brutal extended lockout finally ended in January of 1999. Teams were desperately scrambling to assemble their rosters in a chaotic, condensed time frame. His career seemed completely buried under a mountain of controversy until one fateful January evening. A highly unexpected phone call from the most famous arena in New York City offered him a thrilling, dangerous deal with the devil. The entire sports landscape was completely stunned when the most famous arena in the world decided to gamble everything on the ultimate outcast. How could the New York Knicks justify bringing such a highly controversial figure into a locker room already filled with massive, explosive egos? The local tabloids practically printed their own obituaries for the storied franchise, screaming in massive headlines that this bold move was a monumental disaster waiting to happen. According to the official league transaction logs, the massive trade was legally finalized on January 21, 1999. But to secure this incredibly risky deal, the front office had to make a heartbreaking sacrifice. In the fiery news archives of the New York Post, it was widely reported that the team traded away the deeply beloved city icon, John Starks, completely outraging the intensely loyal fan base. The pressure resting on Latrell's shoulders was absolutely suffocating. When Latrell Sprewell first stepped onto the legendary, brightly lit hardwood of Madison Square Garden, the deafening chorus of boos and highly skeptical whistles echoed loudly through the iconic rafters. The public saw him only as the dangerous villain who nearly ended a coach's career just a year prior. But then the referee tossed the ball into the air, and the narrative instantly flipped. His relentless, high-octane energy and completely fearless drives to the basket immediately started winning over the toughest, most demanding crowd in America. He literally transformed the hostile, toxic atmosphere into a roaring, standing ovation, night after exhausting night. The vicious newspapers eagerly waited for a devastating locker room scandal to inevitably erupt. But instead, during the explosive spring of 1999, the ecstatic spectators witnessed a total basketball miracle that dragged a heavily battered squad straight into a historic championship series. Nobody in their right mind believed a heavily bruised, eighth-seeded underdog could actually fight their way through the brutal Eastern Conference gauntlet. But the New York squad had a lethal secret weapon completely reinventing himself coming off the bench. Under the strict defensive-minded system of Jeff Van Gundy, Latrell Sprewell fully embraced his new role as the ultimate, unstoppable offensive spark. He injected pure adrenaline into a tired roster, slashing through defenses with a ferocious intensity that terrified opposing guards. Every single time he checked into the game, the entire rhythm of the building shifted. The redemption tour reached its absolute peak when they shockingly demolished their rivals and secured a highly improbable ticket to the grandest stage of them all. According to the official league archives, the historic championship series officially tipped off in June of 1999 against the heavily favored San Antonio Spurs. The colossal big men from Texas systematically dismantled the New York offense, but Latrell absolutely refused to surrender without a vicious fight. He was the sole, blazing beacon of hope in a desperately collapsing lineup. In the official game protocols of the decisive fifth match, the incredible statistics show that Latrell Sprewell exploded for a breathtaking 35 points. He relentlessly threw his body toward the rim, hitting heavily contested jump shots while his deeply exhausted teammates struggled to even breathe. It was a valiant, monumental effort, though ultimately not quite enough to capture the golden trophy. However, the dark side of fame had seemingly vanished, replaced by an overwhelming wave of pure public adoration. After that incredibly heroic finals performance, the wealthy executives of New York literally threw their checkbooks at his exhausted feet, aggressively sliding a massive document across the mahogany table that would ironically set the stage for his ultimate financial ruin. The city that never sleeps officially crowned a brand new, highly controversial king, and the financial rewards were absolutely mind-boggling. Latrell Sprewell was no longer viewed as a dangerous outcast. He was the pulsing, glamorous heartbeat of Manhattan. The front office executives were absolutely desperate to keep their electrifying star completely happy, and they proved it with an astronomical mountain of cash. According to the detailed reports from financial insiders and major sports networks in October of 1999, Latrell proudly signed a massive 5-year contract extension worth exactly $61.9 million. He had the world wrapped around his finger, diving headfirst into the blindingly flashy lifestyle of a true New York superstar. He was frequently spotted sitting in the front rows of exclusive fashion shows and cruising down the bustling avenues in customized luxury vehicles fitted with wildly expensive spinning rims. He single-handedly turned those spinning wheels into a massive national phenomenon. But he was not just living a wild party lifestyle. He was consistently delivering heavy blows on the hardwood to justify those enormous paychecks. Looking closely at the verified basketball reference guides for the 2001 to 2002 season, the undisputed numbers show that Latrell Sprewell scored an impressive average of 19.4 points per game. He was the undisputed leader of the offense, heavily relied upon every single night to carry the heavy scoring burden. The fans unconditionally worshipped the ground he walked on, completely blinded by the mesmerizing highlights and the infectious, rebellious swagger. He became the ultimate symbol of wild, roaring success in the big city. But this luxurious golden empire was actually built on incredibly fragile ice, and in the autumn of 2002, a highly bizarre, incredibly secretive incident on a multi-million-dollar vessel proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that his old destructive demons were still lurking just beneath the glamorous surface. The glamorous life of a New York superstar always comes with intense scrutiny, but nobody expected the bizarre twist that unfolded right before the new season. Latrell Sprewell was supposed to be in peak physical condition, ready to lead his squad to another glorious playoff run. However, the dark side of fame has a funny way of interrupting the most brilliant plans. According to the internal medical reports of the team, Latrell arrived at the official training camp in September of 2002, sporting a heavily bandaged, severely broken right hand. A broken shooting hand for a primary scorer is a total catastrophe. But how on earth did the franchise's most valuable asset sustain such a suspicious, devastating injury during the quiet offseason? There are different versions of what truly happened. According to the words of the player himself, it was merely a clumsy accident where he slipped on the wet deck of his luxurious, multi-million-dollar yacht. However, the relentless local press wrote an entirely different story, heavily circulating wild rumors of a violent late-night physical altercation at a highly secretive party. In the investigative reports of the era, it was noted that the front office simply didn't buy his nautical excuse. The management was completely furious, feeling deeply betrayed by their highly paid leader. As a direct result, the organization unleashed an absolutely brutal financial punishment. According to the official club press releases, they slammed him with a staggering, record-breaking fine of $250,000, strictly for failing to report the serious injury on time. $250,000 gone in an instant just for keeping a secret. But why was this specific, massive number so critical? It completely shattered the fragile trust between the player and the wealthy executives. This bitter, expensive incident launched a series of tense, highly secretive backroom negotiations that ultimately culminated in his shocking banishment from New York in the blistering summer of 2003. The blinding lights of Broadway were abruptly swapped for the freezing, unforgiving winters of the Midwest. The New York management had finally had enough of the relentless drama, deciding to ship their volatile star far away. According to the official transaction logs of the league, this massive, landscape-altering move occurred on July 23, 2003. It was a wildly complex four-team blockbuster trade that effectively exiled Latrell Sprewell to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The media immediately labeled him as washed up, a toxic, aging veteran sent to a frozen wasteland to quietly finish his turbulent career. But if there is one thing you can never do, it is severely underestimate a deeply wounded, intensely proud competitor. Latrell arrived in Minneapolis with a massive chip on his shoulder, completely desperate to prove the doubting executives wrong. He joined forces with the incredibly intense Kevin Garnett and the brilliant calculating point guard Sam Cassell, instantly forming a terrifying three-headed monster that shocked the entire basketball landscape. In the detailed scouting reports of that year, it was heavily noted that his veteran leadership and fierce, unapologetic aggression completely transformed the entire locker room culture. And he was not just a loud voice on the bench, he was an absolute Iron Man on the icy hardwood. Looking directly at the historical statistical databases for the 2003 to 2004 season, the undeniable numbers show that Latrell Sprewell laced up his sneakers and played all 82 regular season games. 82 grueling, physically exhausting battles for a man everyone claimed was totally finished. But how could a supposedly broken, aging outcast suddenly find the fountain of youth in the freezing cold? This highly unexpected, magical alliance of fierce veterans worked absolutely perfectly. leading the historically struggling franchise to their absolute greatest achievement in the thrilling spring of 2004. The frozen northern city had never witnessed anything quite like this incredible, roaring stampede. For years, the franchise had been the laughingstock of the league, desperately struggling to make any real noise in the postseason. But with Latrell Sprewell injecting pure, unfiltered swagger into their veins, they became an absolutely unstoppable, terrifying force. According to the official historical archives of the association, the team secured an astonishing 58 victories during that magical regular season. 58 wins stood as the absolute best, most dominant record in the entire history of the franchise. In the widespread journalistic reports of that electrifying spring, it was heavily noted that Latrell was the missing explosive ingredient they had desperately needed for over a decade. He fearlessly took the biggest, most heavily contested shots when the pressure was completely suffocating. The triumphant march pushed them deeper into the bracket than ever before. According to the official playoff schedules, the squad aggressively fought their way into the grueling Western Conference Finals in May of 2004. They found themselves locked in a brutal, exhausting heavyweight brawl against the glamorous, star-studded Los Angeles Lakers. It was a vicious, six-game bloodbath, and although they ultimately suffered the bitter, agonizing sting of defeat, Latrell Sprewell walked off that floor with his head held incredibly high. He had fully redeemed his tarnished name, proving his immense worth on the grandest stage. The fans unconditionally adored him, and the future looked incredibly bright. They were literally inches away from capturing the ultimate golden prize. However, that intoxicating, blinding euphoria completely evaporated into thin air in October of 2004, when he sat down at the mahogany negotiating table and uttered the exact phrase that destroyed everything. The roaring applause of the deep playoff run still echoed in the freezing northern city, but the dark side of fame was already creeping into the executive boardrooms. Latrell Sprewell felt completely invincible, convinced that his highly praised veteran leadership was worth an absolute fortune. According to widespread reports published in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, in October of 2004, the front office presented him with a highly lucrative 3-year contract extension worth exactly $21 million. $21 million for a player firmly entering the twilight of his professional career was a massive, incredibly generous offer. But how did the fiercely proud star react to this staggering pile of guaranteed wealth? He viewed it as a vicious, unforgivable insult. Latrell stormed away from the negotiating table, making a fatal choice that would permanently destroy his entire legacy. During a highly publicized media session, the local reporters captured a quote that completely shattered his public image overnight. Based on the verified transcripts from that infamous press conference, Latrell angrily declared that he would not help the franchise win a title because, in his exact words, he had a family to feed. How could a man who had already earned tens of millions of dollars publicly claim he could not survive on a $21 million deal? The secret was out. His massive ego had completely blinded him to reality. The entire sports landscape erupted in absolute disgust, violently painting him as the ultimate symbol of toxic, ungrateful greed. Latrell confidently brushed off the intense public outrage, fully expecting to step onto the court and force the front office to double their financial offer. However, when the highly anticipated 2004 to 2005 season officially tipped off, his performance on the hardwood revealed a terrifying, entirely different truth. The deafening success he experienced just a few months prior had completely vanished, instantly replaced by the relentless, mocking boos of his very own hometown fans. Every single time Latrell Sprewell touched the basketball, the angry crowd aggressively reminded him of his infamous greedy demand to feed his family. The immense psychological pressure was absolutely suffocating, but an even bigger disaster was quietly unfolding regarding his actual physical condition. The explosive, high-flying athleticism that made him a global icon was rapidly fading away right before everyone's eyes. Looking closely at the official league statistics for the 2004 to 2005 season, the verified numbers paint a highly disturbing picture. His offensive production plummeted to a miserable 12.8 points per game. This was the absolute lowest scoring average of his entire professional career. But why did his body suddenly betray him at the exact moment he desperately needed to prove his immense financial worth? In the detailed scouting reports from that turbulent year, analysts specifically noted that he looked entirely exhausted, frequently losing a step on defense and completely missing wide-open jump shots. The once fearsome Northern squad completely collapsed under the heavy weight of devastating injuries and internal locker room toxicity. According to the final league standings published in April of 2005, the highly expensive franchise completely missed the playoffs, officially ending their season in total disgrace. Latrell walked off the polished floor, arrogantly believing he merely needed a fresh start in a brand new city to reignite his magic. The blistering summer of 2005 finally arrived, and his massive contract officially expired. He confidently entered the open market, absolutely certain that desperate billionaire owners would line up with briefcases full of cash. But the autumn winds brought a chilling, entirely unexpected reality. The extravagant superstar confidently sat in his sprawling, luxurious mansion, eagerly waiting for his golden telephone to ring. After a turbulent career filled with massive blockbuster deals and endless lucrative endorsements, Latrell Sprewell genuinely believed he was still the most highly coveted prize on the open free agency market. But the long weeks slowly turned into agonizing months, and the phone remained completely, terrifyingly silent. Why did the entire professional basketball industry suddenly turn its back on a man who had utterly dominated the scoring charts just a few short seasons prior? In the harsh, unforgiving reality of the league front offices, his incredibly toxic public reputation and his rapidly declining offensive statistics made him entirely untouchable. He was desperately clinging to the fading, glittering illusion of his former glory. According to the highly detailed insider reports published by Yahoo Sports in February of 2006, the Dallas Mavericks finally reached out with a standard veteran minimum contract offer. It was a perfect golden lifeline, a rare chance to join a legitimate championship contender and repair his broken image. But his immense, blinding pride forced him to aggressively demand a significantly higher salary. The deeply frustrated Dallas executives immediately hung up the phone. By March of 2006, the situation became so completely hopeless that, according to the widespread sporting press materials, his own powerful agent, Bob Gfeller, flatly refused to provide any further public comments regarding his controversial client's employment status. The secret was out. Nobody wanted to pay him anymore. The roaring arenas simply moved on, permanently locking their heavy glass doors right behind him. Latrell was officially out of the league, aimlessly wandering in the dark shadow of his own massive ego. He wrongly thought the absolute worst part of his downfall was simply not playing the game, but in September of 2007, a terrifying, highly official letter arrived in his mailbox that signaled the total, catastrophic collapse of his entire financial empire. How does a man evaporate a mountain of wealth that most people cannot even begin to comprehend? During his explosive time in the professional league, Latrell Sprewell amassed a massive fortune that should have comfortably secured his family for generations to come. According to the leading salary trackers and historical basketball reference guides, his total career earnings amounted to approximately $97 million. $97 million is an absolutely staggering figure. But where exactly did all that incredible wealth go? The secret revealed in the financial wreckage points directly to a lavish, completely unchecked lifestyle and an enormous entourage that constantly drained his heavy bank accounts. He was indiscriminately funding highly questionable business ventures and supporting a sprawling circle of friends who completely vanished the exact moment the paychecks finally stopped. In the investigative reports exploring his sudden downfall, it was heavily noted that his investment strategy was completely chaotic, heavily relying on fragile verbal agreements rather than solid professional financial planning. But the dark side of fame truly showed its sharp teeth when the government authorities started looking incredibly closely at his completely empty ledgers. According to the public tax registries from September of 2007, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue officially reported an outstanding debt of exactly $118,000. How could a man who once arrogantly laughed at $21 million suddenly fail to pay a $118,000 tax bill? This terrifying public notice was the ultimate, undeniable proof that his glamorous empire was entirely built on sinking sand. The flashing warning signs were impossible to ignore, but these initial tax claims were merely a gentle warm-up. The true, devastating nightmare began when the relentless judicial bailiffs came aggressively knocking on his front door to take away the absolute most valuable symbols of his incredible wealth. There is nothing more publicly humiliating for a fallen king than watching complete strangers literally carry his expensive throne right out the front door. Latrell Sprewell always proudly flaunted his incredible wealth, but the terrifying, icy reality of bankruptcy quickly transformed his luxurious toys into massive legal liabilities. The absolute most famous symbol of his excessive, roaring lifestyle was his breathtaking luxury yacht, ironically named Milwaukee's Best. But the wild party on the open water ended in an absolute disaster. According to the official federal court materials from August of 2007, a major bank legally stripped Latrell of his ownership rights and forcefully seized the massive vessel, which was valued at approximately $1,500,000. In the Stark case files, it was explicitly noted that the necessary monthly payments had simply ceased, leaving the financial institution no choice but to aggressively reclaim the beautiful boat. But why did the financial bleeding accelerate so rapidly in such an incredibly short period? His entire cash flow had completely evaporated, and his sprawling, beautiful real estate portfolio was the very next target on the chopping block. According to the verified property registries from May of 2008, another bank filed a devastating foreclosure lawsuit to completely seize his beautiful Wisconsin home due to an unpaid mortgage of exactly $295,000. $295,000 is a heavy debt for a regular citizen, but for a former global superstar, it was the ultimate, crushing admission of total financial ruin. The relentless local press eagerly documented every single agonizing step of his spectacular fall from grace, splashing his humiliating foreclosures across the front pages. Stripped entirely of his beloved mansions and custom yachts, the former basketball idol desperately hoped to find some quiet peace in the dark shadows. But in November of 2011, a vicious, devastating strike came from the exact person he trusted the absolute most. When the bank vault is completely empty, the people standing closest to you often become your absolute worst enemies. Latrell Sprewell had already lost his glorious playing career, his massive fortune, and his luxurious homes, but the dark side of fame was not entirely finished, tearing his quiet life apart. The final agonizing blow did not come from a ruthless sports executive or an angry tax collector. It came directly from inside his own shattered household. According to the highly detailed civil court records filed in New York in November of 2011, his longtime partner and the mother of his children aggressively launched a staggering lawsuit against him for exactly $200 million. $200 million. But what terrifying, explosive secrets were hidden inside this massive legal claim? In the official investigative documents submitted to the presiding judge, it was noted that she explicitly accused him of violently breaching long-standing oral agreements regarding their shared financial support and property division. The explosive lawsuit forcefully dragged all of their deeply personal, highly toxic dirty laundry out into the unforgiving public eye. The entire sports world watched in pure shock as the once proud superstar was violently pulled back into the courtroom to fiercely defend the tiny fraction of wealth he had left. The brutal legal war stretched on for agonizing months, draining his remaining emotional energy completely. According to the verified judicial transcripts from 2012, the judge ultimately dismissed the vast majority of the staggering financial claims. He technically survived the vicious courtroom battle, but the psychological toll was absolutely devastating. The endless, exhausting lawsuits and public humiliations completely broke his spirit, forcing Latrell Sprewell to make a radical, life-altering decision that would turn him into a complete ghost to the modern sporting world for an entire decade. How does one of the most famous athletes on the planet simply vanish into thin air? After the exhausting legal battles finally concluded, Latrell Sprewell made a highly deliberate choice to completely erase himself from the public eye. He essentially became a living ghost haunting his own past. The dark side of fame had taken its ultimate toll, forcing the once proud superstar into a deep, highly secretive seclusion. Based on the complete absence of publications in leading sports media during the period from 2010 to 2015, Latrell did not grant a single major television interview, not one. But why would a man who desperately needed money suddenly refuse every single lucrative offer to tell his incredible, scandalous story? In the investigative journalistic pieces that occasionally surfaced, reporters noted that he was quietly living a very modest, completely isolated life back in his hometown of Milwaukee, completely ignoring the flashing cameras. He intentionally completely severed all ties with the professional league that once made him a global icon. However, the wealthy executives never truly forgot about his terrifying financial collapse. According to the testimonies of several former players who attended the mandatory financial literacy programs for league rookies, his infamous downfall was heavily utilized as a terrifying, anonymous case study. Young athletes were explicitly warned about a nameless superstar who tragically blew through $97 million and lost his luxury yachts. This secret was openly shared in those private seminars to scare the new generation. But for over a decade, the man himself remained a total mystery, an invisible cautionary tale. It genuinely seemed like he had permanently crossed basketball out of his life, fully accepting his tragic fate in the quiet shadows. But then, on a freezing evening in February of 2022, the absolutely unthinkable happened. The most famous arena in the world is known for its incredibly long, unforgiving memory, but it also possesses a highly surprising capacity for absolute forgiveness. For almost 20 years, Latrell Sprewell had not stepped foot inside the glittering, chaotic universe of New York basketball. However, the dark side of fame eventually gave way to a powerful wave of pure nostalgia. According to the live television reports broadcasted by the MSG network in February of 2022, Latrell suddenly appeared sitting directly in the front row of Madison Square Garden. He was sitting shoulder to shoulder with other deeply beloved franchise legends, completely shocking the massive roaring crowd. When his face flashed across the giant stadium screens, the entire building instantly erupted in a deafening, incredibly emotional standing ovation. But why did the fans completely forgive the man who brought so much intense controversy to their beloved city? In the historical reference guides covering his turbulent career, the official records prove he was a four-time All-Star and earned 3 selections to the All-League teams. Those incredible, hard-earned achievements are permanently carved into the history books. Looking closely at his complicated legacy, reporters noted that he was a brilliant, fiercely competitive genius who repeatedly became the ultimate victim of his own explosive temper. He remains a powerful symbol of a wildly chaotic era in professional sports, where massive egos violently clashed with astronomical piles of cash. The incredible saga of Latrell Sprewell leaves us with a chilling, highly uncomfortable truth. You can conquer the entire world, secure tens of millions of dollars, and reach the absolute pinnacle of human athletic achievement. Yet it only takes one single devastatingly careless phrase at a negotiating table to completely destroy a lifetime of glorious work.